Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the final grain market blast of the week. Yes, it is Friday. No, I don't know where it went. You join myself and the glamorous, the gorgeous, the goddess of grain herself, Angie Setzer, where Angie will be giving us a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. I'm getting really good at saying this really quickly without
I'm impressed. Look at
But
you.
before we crack on, as usual, nothing discussed on this podcast is trading or investment related. There's no endorsements apart from you should both be following us on Twitter, etc. And both be, well, actually, there's an endorsement for you. You should be signing up to Consensus's, well, Angie's and Carl's baby. Sign up. It's the best agricultural market content you can possibly find out there. Do it. Tell them I sent you. Absolutely. Angie, my love, how are you?
I'm good. I've tried Podbean from my phone today.
To be honest,
Does it
that's
sound
the only
better?
well, it's the only way I've ever done it.
Oh, okay.
You always sound great to me.
Well,
you know this.
I was nervous because I was using just like as raw dog in the sound without having headphones. You know what I mean? Like I just use the microphone. And I'm like, I'd imagine he'd tell me by now if I were really echoey or something. But I was like, I'll try the phone, see how the phone works.
No, you sound like you could be sat next to me, and I wish you were, because I'm sat here. I'm about to have a cider. I wish.
When do you head to Vegas?
I head to Vegas on Tuesday.
Nice, excellent. Looking forward
provisionally coming back on Sunday, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, if allowed to leave. So, but yeah, welcome. It's Friday. Not much of anything. I feel like I'm just kind of like, okay, I know I need to generate some thoughts, but I don't really have much, and that is a unique.
I'm glad you said this. So, one of the problems we've had, well, I say it's a problem, we've almost had too much important news to talk about this year, not just recent, but this year. As we've said before, there's been some major stories that any other year would be huge, but they're just being eclipsed by even bigger stories. It feels like we've got to kind of recenter ourselves. So now it feels like there's nothing to talk about, but there really is.
There's a ton.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You're seeing, and I feel like I'm just continuing to repeat myself with this because the market is obviously not paying attention, or at the very least not caring about it. But we saw another relatively significant escalation between Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine managed to hit target, and there's still a lot of some questions or just some uncertainty because people are like, wait a minute, could it be just an accident? Human error happens. Russia is trying to cover up a lot of this stuff, but Ukraine hit Eurochem, a plant that is 100. 1 second. She sent it. I had a friend send it to me last night that was like, yo, because she literally had just said that earlier that morning, like, be careful because there's intel now that Ukraine's going to start hitting these fertilizer facilities. Like, that's the next thing basically, is like you're hitting critical resources.
Yeah. So and this is what you said. Yeah. And again, hats off to you. Also, I just did realize that I forgot to put the promo tweet out, but I've just done that now.
They'll figure it out.
You did call this last week and you said, look, guys, I think there's been some seismic shifts here. And I remember you said, and again, I get all my news from you basically on this. You clearly said that, in your opinion, these kind of like red lines, we won't hit this, we won't hit this, we won't target that. You said that, hang on, guys, I've got a feeling that might not be the case going forward. Yeah. And this seems to be exactly what's proving to be the case.
Yeah. So this attack on Eurochem, I just found the info.
Yeah, I do listen.
I'm so glad you do, because I a lot of times don't even listen to myself. So it's amazing. But this was 1,600 kilometers. So that's 800 miles. I'm not great at,
I don't know.
We won a war for that. So I don't have to do the kilometers or whatever, but 1,600. So I'm going to, that's the longest distance hit so far.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks are just paying attention to these Tomahawk missiles, completely ignoring the fact that Ukraine announced earlier this week that they also have created basically a cruise style missile that can travel as far as this Tomahawk missile. Now, is navigation as good? Probably not, but maybe that's a feature and not a bug. I don't know. And so there's a lot of things that are happening now where we're hitting Russia's biggest fertilizer producers. This plant last night that was hit basically is ammonia, urea, and ammonium nitrate.
The child in me giggles when I hear urea.
I know. I'm like, but yeah, so that's it's just one of those things you have to pay attention because you
Yeah, of
are
course.
seeing infrastructure hit as well. Rails, rail targets, rail bridges mostly. And I brought this up yesterday and no one else is really talking about it, but I do have a friend that's now looking into it, that actually boots on the ground sort of thing. Like, are these bags really out here that you guys keep talking about? Because it
Right.
should be pretty freaking obvious if you have several million metric tons of grain that you
Where is
didn't
it?
have. Yeah, they're giant white silo bags for F's sakes.
Yeah.
Like, you can see them from a satellite. You should be able to. And so they're going to kind of do some looking into that. But like I said yesterday, you're looking at North American wheat exports up 33% or 32% year over year as of last week. We don't get exports now because the government shut down, but you've got Black Sea and EU exports down 18%, and the big shift lower is actually out of the Black Sea. And that is caused by lack of grain movement, which is being exacerbated by these logistical issues. And so I am absolutely amazed at how impervious this market has been to this stuff, because we're legitimately talking about, 60 million metric tons worth of wheat export potential between Russia and Ukraine. It's 2 billion bushels of wheat that we are factoring into the global market structure that, everyone's just assuming is going to flow like normal. Or at the very least, the conversation is it's going to break loose. And so we're just watching that. We're going to see, how all of this transpires over the weekend. And that's one of the bigger things. Next step, we are hearing from the administration that they are coming up with some sort of package for the U.S. soybean farmer.
Yes.
And a lot of people are like, well, time out, we're only 20 cents lower than where we were when the election happened. Like, we're really not, a year ago this year, a year ago, the end of October, basically, we were trading right around these levels. The unfortunate part, or what's making it harder for a lot of farmers out there, is that we just haven't had opportunity. The bean range really has been $9.75, really $10. Like, we have traded a little bit lower here or there, but, $10 to $10.70 for the bulk of the year.
Yeah.
And the problem lies in the fact that inflation, rising input costs, all of these other things are making it to where we just don't have an opportunity to lock in positive margin. Now, add in the whole, I think Reuters called them devastated farmers desperate for other markets. And I'm like, or they're people producing an effing commodity looking to see who else wants to buy it because it's cheap, because the biggest buyer isn't. Like, can we stop acting like
I'll
this
be
is
very
a
honest.
dramatic thing?
I always internally, cause obviously we have a PIQ, we have a distribution license with Reuters. So I love Reuters. Hi Reuters.
Oh, yeah,
anyone knows
me
it.
too.
But
Yeah.
every time that a Reuters story about grains goes out there, obviously we automatically post. Well, I say we automatically. The social media team obviously will put it out onto Twitter and stuff, and obviously it goes on our platform. And every time, like, a grimacing, going, Angie's looking at this, she's rolling her eyes. I'm like, at least I know she's not saying it's me that's saying it. But.
No, and I love Tom. Tom Polancic was who wrote this one, and and he may not even have been who put the line in, because it was him and someone else. And, like, I'm not being critical. I just wish we would be a little bit more, less dramatic about
Yes.
it. Like, we don't need to have the dramatic flair, but at the same time, industry groups and things are also making it a little bit harder for everyone. But in any event, the biggest thing that I'm watching is that we've basically worked our way through bean harvest. I will have several customers that at the end of this weekend will be completely done with soybeans. A lot of my friends across a good portion of the Eastern Corn Belt are saying the same thing. And I will tell you that we have not seen an implosion in basis. We have not seen an absolute collapse. As a matter of fact, we're seeing some areas actually firm values. It was kind of funny to me. Mankato, Minnesota there's a big crush plant up there. And Minnesota's, kind of in the heart of where you're seeing, well, they're in the heart of probably some of the best weather conditions for the year. Like, they never got dry. They should have some of the best bean yields. And I'm seeing some of them. You're seeing some 70, 80 bushel bean yields, which are pretty phenomenal. But even Mankato yesterday firmed their bid of nickel. Like, and I saw a TikTok of a line where the guy was like, "Welcome to Mankato. I'll be here all week," because the line was so long, but they can move stuff through so quickly. Like, and
Right,
so I
got
think,
you.
to me, I've said this before, like, this week was going to be the tell on whether or not we don't have the ability to handle the crop coming off. And right now, based on basis and even spreads, we're going to be able to absorb this crop pretty decently. And if I were an end user looking at harvest basically wrapping up by the second week of October and everyone putting stuff away with the additional risk of having money coming in from the government, because they did say next week we'll get a trade package put in place, I'd be crapping my pants, because what you thought needed to be a 70 under basis, probably should have been a heck of a lot better, because if you'd have bought them at 50 under, you still have the ability to make good money with the carry and the carry that's in this setup. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch how the weekend progresses. But from an overall standpoint on the cash side of things, I would say right now, and granted, we've got a lot of corn harvest to work through here across the countryside, but for the most part, bean harvest is just absolutely ripping right along. And like I said, by the time we get to Monday of next week, the majority of it's going to be completed. And, the advertised implosion and inability to move beans out of the field and where they need to go has so far been falsely advertised. And so we'll have to see what that looks like for corn and some of these other things, but that would make us the umpteenth market this year that was supposed to be overwhelmed with supply that never really saw any sort of harvest, shit show, for lack of a better term.
Don't believe the hype.
Well, at this point, yeah. I mean, that's what it appears, right? Like a cash market, when you're handling physical commodities, and that's why I love physical commodities so much, is because you have this physical pipeline that you have to monitor. It's not just like, oh, well, we split the stock in half or what, you know what I mean? Like you have finite, exactly. You have so much, and you have demand, and you have all of these
what's
things.
My favorite phrase?
Cash for dough, futures for show, cash for dough.
There we go.
There you go. And so that's what it is. It's like, to me, everyone's like, oh God, what if they're stealing our beans? You'll see it show up in the market.
Yeah, right.
You'll see it show up in the physical market. And maybe that's the case. Maybe that's why we aren't seeing, everything fall apart. Maybe they are coming in to make some purchases for November. But I'm also going to tell you that merchandisers love to talk about themselves, most of them. And no one's trading into China without saying anything, except for if they work for Costco. Because
I guess it's because they want to be the first as well to say it, right?
Exactly. They want to be the one that gave you that little insight into whatever, And so from an overall standpoint, though, I will say that, this week, to not see everything just kind of fall apart. And granted, like I said, we've got a long way to go before corn's off. But with the current forecast, we'll have a little bit of a speed bump next week. It looks like it dries right back out again for the most part across a good portion of the belt. And we'll probably have the majority of this crop put away by the first part of November. Now, having said that, I probably jinxed myself and we'll be harvesting freaking corn at Christmas. But, just we're going to get into next week and have a lot more insight onto what is out there, what needs to be moved, what isn't moving, and, just how this market's going to look here as we move forward. So lastly, government shutdown, doesn't look like we're going to get anywhere on that. So I'm not holding my breath that we'll get a USDA report at the end of next week. There's a lot of talk like, oh, well, this is also shutting down trade negotiations. Like I think someone said, we can't negotiate trade with China because the government shut down. Girl, we ain't negotiating trade with China because they have a holiday. They're gone.
Also, this be very honest, if China picked up the phone, someone would answer.
Well, that's just it. Yeah. And that's like, we can't do it. The government's closed. Well, you have zero issue setting up the credit swap with Argentina if the government's closed. What do I know? So, yeah, it's just one of those things where right now there are a lot of little things happening, but from an overall market structure, overall market sentiment standpoint, everyone's still kind of like, okay, well, this crop is massive. We don't know where we're going to put it all. And China's not buying, so we're screwed. And so, we just got to see how the weekend goes for the first point. Is the crop massive? Are we able to put it away with relative ease? If we are, then that's going to raise a lot of eyebrows. And then is China going to show up? Probably. You have a pretty interesting dynamic with the Argentina sort of short squeeze happening there. It's just, I think there are going to be a lot of arbitrage opportunities that pop up. And, this year's going to be one that you really, it's going to be interesting. And so it'll be a lot of fun to watch as a merchandiser. I'm excited to see it just because it'll be, there are going to be a lot of people that are probably, it's going to be fun.
I see where you're going with that.
With that, we'll call it a Friday. I wish I had more fun, important things to say, but we're pretty much just kind of grasping at straws here.
It's always fun. It's always important when I speak to you. But Angie, thank you so much for this week. As always, you're an absolute star. You know the love I have for you. Our listeners, thank you so much as well for tuning in. Especially now it's all going out on the podcast. So welcome from the past. And just a reminder, this is all recorded live. So that's why sometimes you might hear a swear word from me. Angie might laugh at me sometimes. But that's what we're bringing to the table, right? But whatever you're doing this weekend, whatever you're doing today, stay safe, keep it tight. And we'll see you all on Monday. Much love.
Have a good one, guys.